want to give you my thoughts on this Dodge Ram 1500. I've had this for a while, for probably about 60 or so thousand miles, and I think it's been a really good truck. Before we get deep into this, let me give you the specs of this, because there are many varieties of the 1500 series. This is a 2006 model year. It is the V6, the 3.7 liter V6. It is the regular cab, which means you're only seating, or just one row of seating, I should say. They say that it could technically, I guess in the specs, seat 3 people, but with the manual, and we'll go on the other side actually, it's very difficult. I do ride 3 people in here all the time, but it's very difficult because the person in the middle, A, it's much more helpful if they're smaller, but B, they also either have to straddle the shifter, or they have to kind of put both legs into the passenger's footwell, so you're combining legs in the passenger's footwell. So let's get into it. And also the bed, that's the other spec. This is like I think a 6-foot bed, and depending on which spec you read, some will say it's 6 foot, some will say it's 5.5, some will say it's just over 6 feet. According to Edmunds, it's just over 6 feet. I would count on roughly 6 feet. And the big difference between the 6 foot versus the 8 foot is the ability to haul drywall. So if you're using this as a contractor's truck, it's very helpful to just put drywall down flat, because if you use this, what happens is you have to put the drywall off to the side. Well, drywall tends to bend under very easily, so then you have to get these 2x4s, and you have to insert them and then put the drywall on top of the 2x4, and then kind of strap them down to keep it from shifting. And so by the time you do all that, and for doing this all the time, it's actually better if you get the 8-foot bed. But on the other hand, if you get the really small bed, because some of these trucks have the the bigger seating, but then you don't want the extra length, because if you have the extra seating and then the 8-foot bed, you're talking about a very long vehicle at that point, and at that point it becomes much more difficult to find parking and to actually get into the parking space. So for that reason, what they do is they shorten the bed to a 4-foot bed, and with the 4-foot bed, you really can't haul much. So I find this to be, for my purposes, a very good, I guess, middle ground, so to speak, because it's not that often that I'm hauling drywall, and when I do, I can just put on the 2x4s and put the drywall and strap it down. So let's get right into it here. This is the engine bay, and I've done a lot of work in here, and I should say work to imply that it breaks down a lot. It's actually been a very reliable truck, and I want to stress that. So as we take a look in here, there's a lot of room here into the engine bay. Now I will say this, getting to the plugs into the rear, if you want to give it a tune-up, can be a bit of a challenge unless you have really long arms. But then they also have these ladders that you can put to the side of the truck that allows you to lean into the engine bay without so much strain on your back, right? So this is kind of a look at it, and like I said, been very reliable. Now let's come to the front here and take a look inside the cabin. It's very basic. Everything's manual here, which I love. I absolutely love that, because I don't like sensors. I don't like automatic stuff and electronics, because they're just gonna go bad and then you gotta fix them and it's a pain. So even the window rollers. Now, I will say this, the 2 things, if I had only a choice of 2 things to be automatic, I would want the ability to roll up that window over there from this seat, because I don't have long arms, and it's very hard for me, especially if I'm on the highway, to lean over to that window and roll it down. So typically what I have to do is I have to undo my seat belt, really watch where I'm going, and then lean over and roll that down. At a stoplight, that's fine. And of course the other thing is adjusting that mirror. If I could do that here automatically, that'd be nice. But the fact that everything's automatic manual, to me outweighs that. And on the inside you have a very again, basic gauge cluster. And here what I like, and again, it's a 2006, so it's old, I like the fact it's got this aux port where I can just plug in anything, like my iPod or whatever, and it's just gonna play it. And other than that, we'll take a look at this. You know, very simple. I love it. I don't like the automatic climate control. I know when I need heat. I know how much I need. I'm just gonna crank it, you know, myself. And that's it. You know, 3 cup holders, 1, 2, 3. And let's go ahead and take a look at the back. So here's the gas. It's on the left side, and there is no locking mechanism for your lid. So if you're in a place that you fear somebody might tamper with your gas, that's something to consider. What I love about this is it uses the cheap gas, the 87, because no matter where you go, you're always going to get 87. And especially if you're driving in certain parts of the country where 91 is kind of scarce. In fact, they offer you the choice between 86 and 87 in a lot of cases. The tank is 26 gallons, so you can actually go far. The city mileage is rated at 14 miles a gallon. The highway is rated at 20, so the average is 16. So if you're taking a long trip, you're getting about 20 miles a gallon, but you have a 26 gallon tank. So yes, it's going to cost you, but you're getting you're using the cheap gas, and you can go for a while on that 26 gallons. I think the range is between 360 miles to 500 some miles a tank full. So that's that. If you look on the underside here, right, there is a lot of room to get under. I rarely, unless I have to do something that requires me popping off the wheel, I rarely need to jack this up. In fact, I don't really ever need to jack it up. I just slide down here, and everything I do is just directly under the vehicle. Now let's talk about the height of the vehicle. Let's give you a real long shot here. The height is just over 6 feet. So now for the overall. Oh, by the way, so very important. 215 horsepower, 215, and it weighs about 4,500 pounds, and that is heavy. Now, when you are driving it, you don't feel slow. So if you need to, you know, to get a little bit of pickup, you need to go in this, you know, fast at times. It will give you some speed. It does have 215 horsepower, which is pretty good, or I'd say good, not pretty good. But you definitely feel the weight that it has to pull, which is 4,500 pounds. And I think they do that because in order to, it's a pickup, so it's designed to haul and pull stuff. And so they have to make these chassis really strong on the bottom. And so in order to do that, I guess it's a lot of steel. And so the weight is 4,500 pounds. So it doesn't look like it should weigh that much, but it actually does. And you do feel the weight. It's bulky. It is by no means a fast car, but it's got enough power to get you out of the way of stuff. As far as this is concerned, I'll be frank with you, I'm not a big hauling guy. It's never struggled, I guess, if that's the term, whenever I've hauled like a whole bunch of stuff in the bed. And that's usually, for the most part, furniture, wood furniture. So what I can vouch for is that I've loaded this down with wood furniture, like hardwood furniture, strapped it, and it's been totally fine. I believe the hauling capacity, I guess what do you call it, the payload is about 1,800 pounds. You should Google that to verify that. So you can put 1,800 pounds in this bed, supposedly. I've never tried it. And I believe the hauling, or the towing is what they call it, is 9,100 pounds. Now, when you're gonna, and again, verify those, I'm not sure, that's just off the top of my head from what I can remember. Now, with that said, if you're towing something or you're pulling something like, say, a post out of the ground or a tree or something or whatever, you have to keep in mind that this is a manual. And if you're starting out in first gear, you're gonna have a very good chance of burning out your clutch. You do have a trailer on the back, and that load is really heavy, and you have this manual. I suspect a lot of the same could happen, where you could burn out your clutch components. So if you got the automatic version of this, then again you wouldn't have as much power without the towing or the hauling. But there was no clutch to burn out. So keep that in mind. Other than that, my overall in this is pretty stellar because this has just been so trouble-free. It's so easy to work on. The parts are cheap, the parts are available. It's a great truck to learn how to DIY stuff. Because like I said, the parts are cheap, they're available, everything's easy to get to, underneath, on the top, and it doesn't break down much. It's just been a very reliable truck. So I would buy this again. For me personally, with my lifestyle, the only, I guess, modification I would like to have is a lower roof so that I can more easily get under within the parking garages that have a 6-foot limitation. And so with that said, that's my thoughts on, or those are my thoughts on the 2006 Dodge Ram 1500 3.7 regular V6 regular cab 6-foot bed.